The power of a union is really built on the theory that we are stronger together than any of us are alone. And if you think about it, right, we were a very young organization. This union was built starting in the winter between 2000 and 2001. We got our charter as a local union in 2002 after IP, individual provider home care workers, voted 83% yes for union representation in the largest union election in Washington state history. And at that moment, if you had asked anyone in Olympia, anyone in the media, any of the talking heads, or any part of the elite chattering classes, whether a group of invisible, unbenefited minimum wage workers who didn't even have taxes withheld, weren't even covered with L&I, made pennies above the minimum wage for part-time work, doing incredibly life-sustaining and important work to bring value to the lives of seniors and people with disabilities, whether that group of people at that moment in time, at the beginning of the last Great Recession, would have been able to form a union in the 21st century, a union that started with 1,600 dues-paying members and 13 staff in a little scrubby office down in Soto when we opened our doors, and win a union, win collective bargaining rights, win a union, win a first contract through, Frank, about a year and a half of knockdown, dragged out struggle with members of both political parties, if you and I will recall, that gave a substantial pay increase, health benefits, and L&I coverage in the first contract for home care workers in Washington state. And then, through succeeding contracts, win vision care, dental care, paid time off, mileage reimbursement, to go on to organize 70% of the private sector home care, 30 more nursing homes in Washington state, expand into Montana, lead the nation's most aggressive and important experiment in long-term care workforce development by training 40,000 student learners a year in basic and advanced home care aid skills, leading to a competency-based certification administered by the Department of Health, become one of the largest and most politically forceful progressive organizations in the state, and then pay it forward by helping everyone from port workers to airport workers to fast food workers begin to organize their unions. No one would have bet on that happening in the winter of 2001. And because of the people on this deck tonight, because of many who came before all of us, member leaders, activists, union leaders, staff, elected officials, community allies, that's precisely what happened. Against all odds, against the tide of history, where everything is working against the interests of working people, people stood up and they built an incredibly powerful organization that was fundamentally transformational to the lives of tens of thousands of people in this state. And then along came the next Great Recession. Deeper, darker, fundamentally more sinister, constructed from the most cynical manipulation of our financial and housing markets by Wall Street banks and big corporations, forces that are global in nature, and that for whom it was never okay that all boats would rise together, who were only satisfied if they could turn our economy and our government into a giant, upwardly sucking vacuum cleaner to enrich the pockets of the wealthiest 1%. And for 5 years, our members took pay cuts and hours cuts, or pay freezes and hours cuts, and struggled to hold on to what they had. And this contract that we're celebrating tonight, and are going to be celebrating at, I think, 17 different victory parties around the state over the next 2 weeks, is not a celebration of having reached the promised land, but it is a celebration of taking important steps forward once again. For the first time, probably in the country, extremely experienced, extremely well-trained home care workers will actually be making a living wage. People at the very top of the pay scale who've gone through as much training as they possibly can will, for the first time, be making around the median wage for workers, hourly wage earners in the state of Washington. There is much work to do. There is much work to do for part-time workers who still don't have access to health care coverage. There's much work to do for entry-level workers who are still struggling with incredibly low wages, especially in places like the city of Seattle, where the cost of living is very high. But tonight, it's time to celebrate, because in a world where the interests of working people are too often left ignored or unheard, where it is becoming the norm for work to be poverty wage work in this country instead of middle class work, in a world where the jobs that used to pay $60,000 a year in today's wages in the 1970s now pay minimum wage, this organization, its members, its leaders, its activists, its fantastic staff, and its fantastic supporters among our elected friends and our community allies are forging a heroic and courageous counterexample of what can actually happen when a lot of people who are ordinary people stick together, act with simple acts of strength and peace and solidarity, and through those acts achieve extraordinary things. So for every home care worker here today, this toast is to you and to your fantastic new contract. It is not the end of the road, but it is an important step forward. Congratulations to all of you. Your strength and your perseverance has paid off. To the home care workers here today.